things that weigh us down and get heavy on us, and we get bubbleized in our own world, our own problems, many times that's all we can see. So once again, think about how Jesus is working amongst all of our messiness. And we're going to look at a passage today, familiar passage maybe to some of us. But as we look at this with new eyes and we think about this miracle, this is the first miracle that's recorded in John's Gospel. It's the only place that we find where Jesus is at this wedding and he turns this water into wine. I want us to think about where miracles not only still exist, but how we're an active part of the way that Jesus performs miracles. This in particular passage, as I think about all the gospel writers, but as I think about John in particular, John begins his gospel there in chapter 1. We don't get Mary and Joseph in Bethlehem. We don't get the Christmas story. He comes right into his account about Jesus, talking about Jesus being the Word who was with God, the Word who was God. He begins from the very beginning saying, he's not just some great healer, some great prophet, some great teacher. He's God in the flesh. And everything that John's going to write about will continue to proclaim Jesus being 100% human, 100% God. And what that not only meant at that time, but now what it means for all eternity, for all creation. So this is interesting that as he gets so deep into talking about Jesus in these terms, calling him light, preparing with John the Baptist, and he gets to chapter 2, and he gives us an account of Jesus and Mary and the disciples going to a wedding. And I scratch my head and go, all right, did John just go, you know what, I've written all this, but I need a little more space for something else. You know, like we preachers, sometimes we use way too many words, okay? I just get to the point where I go, Brian, you've said enough words for the day, now shut up. Did John get that place where he goes, I just need a filler. I need something else to go in there. So did he go, you know, there was that time. There was that time we went to that wedding, and boy, Jesus did something pretty special. I don't think he's doing that just to fill some more words into his gospel. I truly believe, like you see everything else and all the gospel writers, the way that they strategically reported the healings, the teachings, the miracles, the death, the resurrection, all those things that they said the world needs to know about who this Jesus is. But this miracle is not about water, and it's not about wine. Okay. God used that situation there to connect, to invest, and engage. And I want us to look at this passage with those lenses this morning as we deal with our own set of brokenness that's in us and with us and around us, and how the grace of Jesus just knows exactly what is needed at all times and all places. Stand with me. Let's read this together. Second chapter of John, verses 1 through 11. Listen very closely here. It says, on the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus took his disciples, who also had been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, they have no more wine. Woman, why do you involve me? Jesus replied, my hour has not yet come. His mother said to the servants, do whatever he tells you. Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water. So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet. They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now. Listen very closely. What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory. Which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Please be seated. Thank you. So John, the good storyteller here, gets us to this, again, this wedding reception. And I tell you, reading through it the first time this week kind of reminded me my first career was 20 years in the restaurant business. Some of you know that I spent the first few years of it delivering pizzas for Domino's back in the mid-1980s. They were putting them on all street corners. And man, I just loved the pizza business. But I can tell you, it's always a nightmare when you run out of something, okay? I don't know about you, but I hate going, especially to food places, and they go, "We don't have that tonight, I'm sorry." Okay? I can remember one time, and this still haunts me. This was, Bruce, this was back in Dalton. This was back in Dalton, Georgia. On a football Friday night before the Dalton High Catamount game. That was your rival. Football Friday was big. And I remember that we ran out of pepperoni. Yeah. That's not good to be a pizza place and go, "You know what, we don't have pepperoni." And that was embarrassing. I hated not being prepared. So again, I can see the messiness here at this banquet of them going, "You know what? We're out. It's out." And there were a couple things that could happen here where they could say, "Well, okay, we're out. Time for everybody to go home." But there was something here as we intermarry into the scene here. Again, if we want to think about a person who really understood this calling that not only place of her life, but about the responsibility then of being the mother of Jesus, of understanding all of that prophecy being foretold in her, giving birth to this child, watching all of the way that he was growing up. Jesus is about 30 years old here, and I don't know I don't want to take any huge liberties here, but I think as a parent, Mary had been long waiting for Jesus to really begin to reveal his glory. And as parents do a lot, they will give their children some encouragement to say, "Right, it's time." So as she saw this opportunity, I'm not going to say that she cared about whether the water got turned into wine or not. As John reports here, this was now about the glory of Jesus now beginning to be revealed. And it was revealed through the lenses of a messy situation. And I love where Mary says in here after Jesus is going, "You know what, Mom? Not yet. Not yet." But she says to the servants, two that are standing here waiting for the miracle to begin, just do whatever he tells you. Now, as Jesus begins to get involved in the scene, as Jesus begins to invest in what's going on, I think it's beautiful here that as we see the 6 stone water jars, can you get in your mind's eye something holding from 20 to 30 gallons? That's a pretty big container. Pretty big container that's going to hold this water. And I think it's interesting here because Jesus, being fully God, could have went, and everybody could have had a glass in their hand. He could have done that miracle without even anybody know what was going on, what was happening. But I think it's very beautiful the way that Jesus works relationally. As Jesus provides, he's asking us, will we take a step towards this grace? This is the way that Jesus will always work. And here's another great example of it. I love the words here. Jesus says, "Fill the jars with water." I want to think about this because that spoke to my heart this week preparing. I catch myself in all my busyness, all my brokenness, running with my jar completely empty. How many of you today are walking around doing life with an empty jar? Think about this. As I remember my first car, the gas gauge there, I knew how far past that E that I could go. I'd had it, even took a little marker right there and said, okay, when it gets past there, I know I better go to the gas station. And then the technology got better where we had the little light that would come on. Time to get to the gas station. And our cars today, if you got a newer, nicer car, it'll tell you this how many miles before you're going to run out of gas. Okay? Don't raise your hand, but how many of you wait before it says 2 miles before it's time to get to the gas station before you decide it's time to pull in? And I think for many of us, myself included here, that's an expression of how we live sometimes. We think that we can just keep going with empty jars, and we can't. So Jesus begins this miracle by saying, just fill jars. And I'll tell you, when we stop at those Jesus gas stations, really get in time with that intentional time with God to really get full of God's Spirit, how God is calling us and preparing us and equipping us for not only the day ahead, but the season ahead, for whatever that we're going to encounter in this time and in this place and in this season. You know what? We begin to then express the miracles in and through our own lives, and we begin to see them in the world around us. Because I think it's beautiful here as the servants just fill that water. The next thing Jesus says, now draw some out. Which is another thing that we need to understand. As soon as we are filled, as soon as we've got that big blessing from Jesus, it's not ours just to hold on to. It's to be drawn out. It's to be shared. And it comes in so many forms and in so many places and in so many times and so many places. Sometimes people that we know we're going to come in contact with. And just like I told the kids, that little kid went to school that day with "I want to be your friend" on his shirt, and he found 2 friends. There was a time for him just to be full of this love that he wanted to express, and now he's going, all right, I got 2 new candidates. And begin to connect and invest and engage. And again, I'm running on empty so many times. I not only forget to stop and get filled up, so many times I'm so empty, I go, man, well, I just want to keep this. This is nice being full. Don't we like seeing that needle over there on full? I can go a lot of places when I have a full gas tank. Knowing that God wants us to share it. Because it's beautiful here how if Jesus decided that miracle was just going to be for him or for Mom, he could have left the audience right there with those 2 and just said, okay, Mom, I'll do it and change it. But begin to look at the ripple effect there as the 2 servants saw what happened. They knew that was water there. They experienced the powerful presence of Jesus, and now were moved by what was going on there. The master of the banquet said, oh my goodness, what is this? Everybody now began to be participants of this drawing out of the revealed glory of Jesus. Remember, this is not about water, it's about wine. It's about how now the grace of Jesus was just pouring out all over this place. And if we can get to the place in the business of how we are to fill our tanks for Jesus, in order then to be a blessing for whoever that is that we're going to come in contact with next, with whatever resource that means. Sometimes it's a smiley face on your shirt. Sometimes it's a thank you. Sometimes it's just whatever is needed in the situation, and allow the glory of Jesus then to take care of the next person and the next person and the next person. I love the way that anytime it's about the revealed glory, blessing, the grace of Jesus, it really is an exponential view of this. It's never just about one situation, about one person. It may look like that. It may manifest that way. But as we begin just to allow our life to be shared, the good, the bad, the ugly, and we begin to get in front of people that need to hear that I'm not the only one dealing with this. And there is hope. And I love the way that you're dealing with this. I need to be encouraged. All those different expressions, the world becomes this place that is just being spilled over with the grace of Jesus. And this is a beautiful example of Jesus taking a messy situation, commonplace, something we go, oh, well, that was nice that they just went to this wedding, and wasn't that beautiful that Jesus did a miracle? We could leave it just there. We could leave it in a historical manner and just go, let's go to the next chapter. But if we begin again at the place where my Jesus jar needs to be filled, and I use that Jesus in front of that because to put anything else in the Jesus jar is not, it's not going to work. And as soon as we know that the next person needs some of this drawn out, can we be faithful with it? It's easy in that core of folks that we get along with and we love, and it's easy to do that sometimes, but how many times is God calling us to let that come out in places where it's just not comfortable for us? It's harder. It's messier. But it's part of this forgiveness and love that we talked about last week. And end with this. I mentioned this briefly last week of the Thessalonian church. Again, how Paul went to this place and spent 3 weeks there and just planted some Jesus seeds with them, got them full. And then he had to leave, and he continued to get reports about how they were modeling this love of Jesus. And the text will say that not only making an impact there in Thessalonica, but now it was getting across to the next region, and the next region, and the next region. Again, we never know on this side of eternity the effect that we're making on an individual, how that is going to continue to plant seeds, and how the gospel of Jesus is connect one person and another one and another one and another one and another one. That's that whole thing about each relationship, the way we connect, and we invest, and we engage, is so vital to the way that we truly show that we're on this journey with Jesus and all people. And I'll tell you, I am so, I'm boiling over in a good way right now with the ways of just these last week and a half, all the ways that we've expressed our love for our schools. And how we've started out this year with going, we want to be invested in what y'all are doing, and with teachers and students and with everybody. And again, it just affirms to me that as we look about taking care of our neighbors, how beautiful God has given us strategically this location to be connected to that high school right there, and that middle school right there, and an elementary school right down there, and another elementary school right down there. And my meeting tomorrow deals with the University of North Georgia at Gainesville, a mile and a half down the road. How God is just saying, man, I put you in a strategic place to love on my children. And folks, I think if we're going to look at 174 years from now into a crystal ball, I think this could be one of the expressions that catapults us right now is because of the seeds that we're planting in those. So buckle up, Redwine. We're going to have a Connect and rest. My pot of coffee. Let's pray. Just thank you again. As we look again at this